Why are they screaming?
They're not screaming. They're celebrating.
Dad!
Shouldn't we be nervous? Yeah.
Geeks Talk Independence Day Resurgence. The sequel, 20 years in the making. The original Independence Day premiered in 1996. It was one of the biggest films of the year. In fact, one of the biggest films of all time at the time. 20 years later, a sequel, the very first sequel, directed by the director of the original, Roland Emmerich, and once again starring Jeff Goldblum and Bill Pullman. Will Smith not returning for the sequel, more on that later. In this sequel, the aliens are back, surprise, surprise. I don't even know where to go from there. I really don't know where to go from there. I'm a very big fan of the original Independence Day. It's probably, for me, I watched it when I was 10 years old, and it was my Star Wars as a kid, which I know a lot of people will probably think it's not on the same level as Star Wars, but for me, at 10 years old, it really was. I wasn't exposed to Star Wars like others. Now, I'm guessing you were.
No, I didn't. It was Jurassic Park for me. Jurassic Park was the big film for me when I was a kid. I didn't catch Star Wars until the 97 re-releases. So
okay.
But I do remember Independence Day from childhood as well.
So you would have been 9?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, and I was 10. The truth is, with Independence Day, that the reason that it resonated with me so much was because I found it absolutely terrifying. I thought it was really scary. I really believed that there were aliens on the way.
It's funny because I think that applies to me with Jurassic Park as well.
What, you believed in dinosaurs?
Yeah,
little islands.
I still find the T-Rex attack just absolutely terrifying to watch.
The one with the kids.
Yeah, we're not talking about Jurassic Park.
I wish we were.
Oh, but yeah. I mean, it's ironic because I think the way you feel about Independence Day Resurgence is a little more extreme, but not a million miles from how I felt about Jurassic World, to be honest. So.
And how do I feel about Independence Day Resurgence? Well, here's my opinion on Independence Day Resurgence. So it's difficult to get a sequel for something like Independence Day, first of all. I mean, Independence Day was at the time, a sort of contemporary version of something like War of the Worlds or your typical alien invasion film done in a contemporary way. And like I said, I bought into it. So I didn't see it as some kind of cheesy, corny affair. As 10 years old, I bought it as a very serious sci-fi drama, and it was really horrific. It scared the living crap out of me. That's how I felt. I remember being terrified by it. And it was only as the years went by that I started to see more of the fun in it. But it really is, for me, a special film. The problem with something like Independence Day straight away is that it doesn't need a sequel. It is such a self-contained story. It just doesn't need a sequel. The only way to go forward with Independence Day is the aliens come back, which is what they've done. And in the sequel, to be fair, story-wise, they've probably done pretty much the only thing they could do. The aliens come back, and we've got to fight them again.
I think their justification for the aliens returning is done quite well.
Really?
Personally.
Well,
I mean, it's you learn that it wasn't just a random attack the first time. They were after something. They weren't. The humans believed them to be a plague, a locust type species who just went around destroying stuff for the sake of destroying stuff. And you learn now that wasn't the case, and they were actually after something, trying to achieve something. And having heard a distress call from the first wave, they know that they haven't achieved that goal, so they've gone back to achieve the same goal with more force.
But I've seen the film now, and I still can't tell you what the goal was. They're drilling into the earth.
They're drilling into the earth to absorb the
really?
to absorb the Earth's core, because they need it to power their ships.
Right.
And their sort of species, their lifestyle, what they use. Basically, they strip mine planets and use their energy.
So why didn't they just do that in the first one?
Well, you find out that they were. You find out that in the first one, it's very America-centric, whereas we find that there was a ship in Africa that started drilling to the Earth's core in the first attack.
Right.
And because it was the only ship that landed, and because it had landed for 10 years, it had been at war with this sort of African
tribe.
Well, I sort of took that it was a nation that was run by a warlord.
Right.
Which in itself didn't sit right with me, that one of the heroes we then followed was an African warlord. But I may have misunderstood that.
I misunderstood a lot of it, so
that sort of made sense to me. The reason for them being there, and it made sense to me that, considering how America-centric the first one was, we wouldn't necessarily know about the second ship. The only part of it that didn't make sense to me is why the entire world didn't send their forces to destroy this ship, and why this small African nation was left to fend for themselves and fight it off themselves, while the rest of the world just monopolised and mined all the alien technology, and yet this African nation was just left to fend for itself.
Okay. So obviously we're starting with the story, and already I know there are going to be people listening to this going, you're pulling apart the story of Independence Day 2. You know, who cares about the story?
But I think more so with the sequel than the original. In the original, you don't need a reason for it to happen. Just aliens come.
Yeah.
That's been happening in fiction since War of the Worlds. You know, aliens just turn up and they want to destroy the Earth. No rhyme or reason, they just do. Whereas I think with this one, you need a reason for them to come back. And I think they kind of achieve that, really.
I can let that go. I can let the story go, to be honest. I do think that a lot of it doesn't make sense, and certainly the end doesn't make any sense, the way it sort of goes, oh well, we'll go. Because it really does sort of end like, oh okay, you win, we're going.
Well,
it does.
I mean,
they just sort of go.
Well, they're defeated.
We'll come on to that a bit more later. So, like, the story is, I can accept, but I definitely think the biggest problem with Resurgence for me is the execution. Now, bearing in mind, this is by the same director, okay, Roland Emmerich. And if you look at things like Independence Day 1, and especially Stargate, they have a fantastic sense of style and continuity. And I think the biggest difference here, for me, that ruins Independence Day Resurgence is that it's a bit like the old sitcom thing that me and you talk about all the time, that I say that the problem with comedy these days is that people pay it, the actors and performers play the comedy for comedy, whereas they used to play it serious, and out of the seriousness came the comedy. And I think Independence Day suffers from the same problem. They played the first film very, very serious.
I'm not sure. There's a lot of comic relief in that film.
Yeah, but they played it serious, and the comedy came out of that, whereas this, now everybody knows, or people seem to remember Independence Day as much cheesier than I believe it to be. They played the sequel much more corny, and now it comes across as ludicrous because it just seems like they are playing it hard.
David's father is clearly supposed to be a comic character in the first film.
Yes.
The guy that works with David, I can't remember. Oh my God, I gotta call my mom. There is
Harvey Firestein.
There is no way that he is supposed to be in any way, shape, or form a serious character.
That's fine, but that's a character.
No, and David's dad as well.
Okay, but to be fair,
Will Smith is pretty much played for it's Will Smith. He's not playing it straight, really.
But he is playing it straight. He's not playing it for comedy. He isn't like, and here's the gag, which in the sequel they all seem to be. It's like everybody knows the gag. Like the continual reference of, they like to get the big, the iconic landmarks, like play it a bit softer, for goodness sake. You're playing it for.
But see, that to me seemed like something that the David character would say in the wake of the first film, because in the first film they do specifically destroy the landmarks, and they actually play with that line later in the film when you see a completely leveled Paris with the Eiffel Tower still standing, which to me seemed like a callback to that line.
Well, I still argue that the execution is farcical. I think at a point it became embarrassing. It just played the comedy too hard. It didn't take itself seriously, which a lot of people I know will be saying, well, that's the point, but I don't believe it is. My recollection of this is it was fairly serious, the first one, because I was younger, obviously, so I'm going to look at it differently. But there was a lot of seriousness. The scenes in the original film where you see the destruction of LA and New York, and they're terrifying. There's nothing funny about those. And this is like, everything is meant to be hilarious. Everything is meant to be funny and cheesy and corny. And I think it devalues the original film.
I think they made a mistake showing us the only real mass destruction scene from the point of view of characters watching it from a safe distance. I think we should have seen something more ground level in that scene. But then, having said that, it was so chaotic and so destructive that I don't know how you would have shown anything from ground level.
Well, now you mentioned the destruction. Here's the other problem I got with the film, is that it is a Roland Emmerich film, and ever since Godzilla, I suppose after Godzilla, he just literally ditched the old school filmmaking techniques. I mean, Independence Day is filled with magnificent model work, and there is not a fraction of it to be seen in this. It is a CGI washout.
To me, you've got two distinct portions of Roland Emmerich's career. You've got the pre-CGI 90s portion, and you've got the CGI Day After Tomorrow onwards portion. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of Roland Emmerich since Day After Tomorrow, maybe even Godzilla. Although I think Godzilla's better than it's given credit for. It's got its moments. But I just haven't been a fan. I haven't seen 2012. I hated... well, I didn't hate White House Down. But it was just sort of Roland Emmerich making a Die Hard film, really.
And not doing a particularly good job of it either.
No, I mean, if you compare the two White House films that came out that year, it's vastly superior to Olympus Has Fallen for me because of that sense of humour.
I'm completely on the other side, because I think Olympus Has Fallen is a far superior film to White House Down.
The thing is, I think Roland Emmerich revels in destruction, not death. Okay, he definitely gets a kick out of destroying well-known landmarks, gets a kick out of destroying cities, but he doesn't dwell on death. Whereas Olympus Has Fallen very much dwelled on death, and really got a kick out of death.
Well, we talked about the story and the tone of the sequel, and obviously we chatting about Roland Emmerich, the director. I think the big problem again with Resurgence is there's far too much focus on the visual aspect, which is disappointing on every level anyway. Don't care what anybody says, but there's definitely not enough direction for the actors. I don't feel like there are lots of new characters in this film. I could not tell you, definitely not tell you the name of any one of them, what they really do, what they're there for. There's a lot of characters that are not introduced, and the original is so good at introducing you to everybody. You get to see everybody, what they do, who they are, where their place is in this story, and you can kind of see, I can see where this is going, I can see why they're going to connect to that, much better than many other films have done, like things like Love Actually and stuff come close, but there's a lot of characters, like a soap, and they do all come together well, whereas this it doesn't, and all the new characters are bland, really bland.
I do think to a certain extent it felt that within the 20 years that had passed, all these characters had got to know one another, built relationships, and we were just sort of dropped into that and gone, right, this is the status quo. This is how these characters are now, without any real explanation as to why or how they got that way. For instance, Will Smith's son's character, it was just sort of like, yeah, he's very high up in the Air Force now.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly. What happened?
And they sort of, you very much feel that when Will Smith declined to come on board, or they declined his salary, they didn't rewrite the character much.
No, that's true.
You sort of feel like if Will Smith at the beginning of the film had walked into the White House decorated in Air Force colours, you'd have gone, yeah, that makes sense. I see how he's now at that point. And if he was one of the, you know, sort of pilots being sent up to do the Independence Day display over the moon base and things, you think, yeah, that makes sense. And you sort of feel so they've just given all this to his son because he's his son.
So we can pretty much say then that character was Will Smith's character. They replaced it with his son and just didn't do any effort to give him a backstory.
They put a very loose backstory in there with Liam Hemsworth's character that probably wouldn't have been the case otherwise because of the age difference. But I really feel like that is how Will Smith's character would have been in the script, pretty much verbatim.
And of course, you mentioned Liam Hemsworth, who, again, bland. I just thought he was just dull to watch and not exciting at all.
No, I didn't feel like there was... sorry, what's the name of the actor who plays Will Smith?
It's Jesse Usher.
Jesse Usher. Okay, so I didn't feel there was really much of a need for Jesse Usher and Liam Hemsworth to be in this film.
No, none at all.
They one or the other would have sufficed. Preferably Jesse Usher, because at least that was a character, if not an actor we already knew. Liam Hemsworth just seemed to have no point, and his sidekick even less.
But they're just two characters in a film filled with nobodies, frankly. I mean, I was quite excited to hear that Celia Ward is in it as the president, and she played Dennis Quaid's wife in Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed her in that. She had a very small role, but she had a story and a purpose and a reason for being there, and it was enjoyable. In this, nothing. I can't tell you anything about her apart from the fact she's the president. That's it. And again, so overplayed. It's so knowing of it being, it's like, this is a ridiculous film, so let's play it really ridiculous. I just thought it was so ridiculously corny.
I didn't enjoy her being killed off screen. And a throwaway line that the entire line of presidential succession were all in the same place. And did you feel it was made obvious why William Fichtner's character was suddenly next in line to be president?
No.
Because that made no sense to me whatsoever. From what I could gather, he was just a general in the army.
Actually, that was a bit that really weirded
me out. And then all of a sudden, he was being sworn in as president because they put the entire presidential line of succession in the same place. What?
No, completely agree. Completely agree.
That really... don't get me wrong, I'll watch anything that's got William Fichtner as president, but it didn't make any sense to me story-wise.
No, definitely not. And this is just scraping the surface on unnecessary characters and their lack of purpose. For example, Vivica A. Fox returning as Will Smith's...
Oh, that was worthwhile, wasn't it?
Well, no. She might as well have just been a plate on a table somewhere in a scene, because that was completely pointless.
And I'll completely buy that a woman can develop from sort of a young streetwise single mother stripper into a qualified doctor, I'm going to say, because she certainly didn't look like a nurse.
No, I would say doctor.
Qualified doctor. I'll buy that can happen in 20 years, but just give me a little explanation as to how. Just the slightest.
That didn't even bother me as much as the fact that she was in two scenes doing something.
But she saved a baby, though.
Yeah, but again, it was like, just give her something to do. Yeah. It wasn't like that really connected with anything else going on.
It was like they had an Independence Day reunion party and everyone went, yeah, I'll do it, apart from Will Smith, who had too much to drink and went home. and Vivica A. Fox was sort of sat in the corner and they sort of went, oh yeah, do you want to be involved as well? It was like the second that Will Smith was out, they had no idea what to do with that.
Yeah. And they really didn't.
And I feel like they probably cast her while they were still hoping they would get Will Smith. And once he said no, they were like, what are we going to do now?
I'll just make her into a nurse and she can, I don't know, save a baby and then she can just disappear.
And just it happening in front of her son and him just a sort of right, I'm over it now.
Yeah. Oh, it was.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Those 5 seconds did have a little bit of an emotional resonance with me, because the feeling of him being sat in his jet, helpless, just having to watch his mother die, that had a little bit of emotional resonance. Mm-hmm. But it was instantly forgotten about.
It really was. It was. I didn't feel anything. I mean, I've genuinely felt less in this film. I tell you what probably didn't help me at all, because I do have such an emotional attachment with the original. I watched the first before I went to see this in the evening. I tell you honestly, I squealed like a girl. I laughed, I cried, I was excited, I had adrenaline pumping. I loved watching it again. I really did. And I went in watching that in the evening, and it was just nothing. I might as well just stared at a wall. I felt nothing for it. I've never felt so disappointed in any sequel. For me, this was the episode 1 of my life. This was, Phantom Menace, but worse, frankly.
See, I think because I don't have that attachment to the original, I enjoy the original as something I will stick on a Sunday afternoon if I've maybe, got a bit of a hangover, and I'll just sit there and I'll eat some junk food and I'll watch Independence Day. And that is what the original is to me. I love it, but I love it as that sort of film. And while there is no argument that this sequel is inferior, it is. I saw it as that sort of film as well.
I think my issue with it is that I have a lot more investment in it. I have a greater respect for it. It has a higher value for me, and I think the thing that insults me the most, and I have seen this on the internet, that I think people that value it like me do feel like that the director and the cast and everybody involved in this has devalued it. Their memory of the original is far cheaper than my memory of it. They've looked at it and gone, that was a goofy bit of fun, let's do another one, in the way that you would value something like Mars Attacks. Now, if this was a sequel to Mars Attacks, tonally it's much more suitable. But this is just embarrassing. It's just very embarrassing.
I think where I'm torn as to what the intention was here is Roland Emmerich, Dean Devlin, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Pullman, Brent Spiner, everyone being back makes it feel like a proper sequel made with love. But then you look at it from the other side and it's like Fox have sort of shuffled through their sock drawer and their junk drawer and gone, what have we got in here that we can repurpose and try and build a franchise of? Oh, Independence Day, that'll do. That's got aliens in it.
That is the entire reason for this.
Definitely once you get to where the direction the end seems to be pointing in, definitely seems like this is now going to become a space adventure series. And they needed to make this film to set up what they're now going to be hoping is a space adventure, going around visiting different planets, different species of aliens. I mean, this one introduces a new species of alien. Yeah,
which again really, really ticked me off. Really did.
The eye alien.
It was
Apple alien.
It looked like the spaceship from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
It looked like a Pokeball, is what it looked like.
But
it looked like Marvin's head from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Marvin's head, that is what it looked like. It was just a giant Marvin's head.
I have nothing wrong with them introducing
I do.
Another alien. But why?
Because it was never about. To me, this is the issue with it, because it is like they're trying to create a new Star Wars for them, and they might as well have picked Mrs. Doubtfire as the starting point for it. It's just not that franchise.
How do you feel about the fact they've reverse engineered all this technology and they've got bases on the moon and on one of Saturn's moons and on Mars?
That makes sense. All the stuff about the humans adopting the technology to defend themselves makes sense. But I'll tell you one thing about the way this film was sold to me. I will admit that I only saw the teaser trailer, which I stand by as being better than the film. I'll happily watch that teaser trailer and just imagine I've never seen the final product and it being like the dream of the sequel I always wanted. It was a damn good trailer. I never watched any other trailers, and that first trailer And a lot of the marketing doesn't really push the fact that you're actually in a much more sci-fi world.
I agree.
Which really did nothing for me.
I was really... The first sort of 10 minutes I was in this film, I was really taken aback. And I felt really sort of like, whoa, hang on. What's happening here?
Yeah.
This flying. This looks like 2015 in Back to the Future Part 2.
It does, yeah.
What is going on here? But then as you get into the film and you settle into that, it all adds up and it all makes sense. But I think that's part of the sort of this attachment with this film as compared to the original as well. The original was very much, what if aliens came and invaded 1996? Present day. Whereas this one is a lot more difficult to form that attachment with, because it just feels like aliens are invading some distant sci-fi universe or some parallel universe. It doesn't feel like our world.
And I think, again, that ties in with my evaluation of the original, in that I find it so scary because it really did feel like this could happen to me here today. I really bought into that. This is your typical 1996. This is what it feels like. And then aliens turn out and blow the shit out of the world, and that is what terrified me about it. And again, that's going to be a lot to do with why I didn't connect with the sequel. It did feel like you said, like a sort of Back to the Future 2. And I didn't expect it to be quite that much. But the thing that, from the get-go of the announcement of this project, and when they started doing the viral campaigns and stuff, the first thing I was thinking of was, how are they going to portray Earth after a major attack? How are they? Surely all the landmarks are gone. They shouldn't be there. And the idea that they've just rebuilt them exactly the same, to me, didn't work.
They weren't. Like, the White House looked noticeably different. It looked like a building that had been built in tribute to the original White House.
Big Ben
but was
didn't.
Also different.
Big Ben
looked exactly the same.
And why is the wheel there? Because the wheel wasn't there in 1986. And you can't tell me that, even though aliens blew up the planet, they're still going to go ahead with that plan for the wheel. Things like that did bug me as much as they're trivial. I just thought, it wouldn't be there.
It would be a domino effect that would cause things like that not to happen. You just simply wouldn't have the infrastructure to be arsing about building a big wheel.
Exactly.
When you had Big Ben to rebuild.
Exactly. And I was quite disappointed that, because there is on paper, if you read that scene where, literally a city lands on London, I mean, that sounds like something that should be brilliant. But visually, it just didn't feel real. I didn't buy any of it. I wasn't excited by it at all. It was just kind of like, oh, well, look at that CG stuff there and there. It just didn't feel real.
To be honest, if we're talking about why the big wheel was there, I think we need to... If you're going down that route, I think you need to think about how short a space of time 20 years actually is. Because nothing was in the process of being rebuilt. Okay, the world had moved on, the world was rebuilt. To use a real world example, the World Trade Center reopened 2 years ago? So that was... 13, 14 years that took. Now, that's just one site.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking cities. So, realistically, the world should still be in a fairly large state of rebuilding.
I mean, I suppose you could argue that the alien technology...
That's their Deus Ex Machina.
Exactly.
Now. Everything. It's the new equivalent of a wizard did it. It's why is that alien technology?
Yeah. But and again, I know people are probably listening going, oh, for God's sake, get a grip. It's just a sci-fi action film. But this stuff is important. I can't buy into this universe if you're going to just think, well, it doesn't really matter, just whatever.
But I have to say, while I was sat there in the theatre watching the film, none of these things crossed my mind. It's only having the analytical mind I do that since watching the film I've thought about these things. But none of these things hurt my enjoyment of the film. I wasn't sat there thinking, well, that's ridiculous, 20 years later they should still be rebuilding. I was like, oh, it's the future.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, flying cars.
Yeah, but again, it was the glossiness of it just, they should have gone on Blade Runner on it. There should have been model screens flying everywhere, and a model of Big Ben being blown up, and
I think it's very naive to think that an alien attack would create peace throughout the entire world. If you're going to tell me that in the wake of an alien attack, North Korea wouldn't be, and countries like Russia and possibly China wouldn't be hoarding as much alien technology as possible and trying to build their own super weapons, it doesn't add up to me that the whole world would just go, oh well, we all fought off an alien invasion together, let's all be friends. I mean, look at what's happened over the weekend.
Politically, it was interesting watching it at this time.
We just mentioned the idea that we might want to leave the EU, and Europe have all turned their backs on us.
Yeah, you're right though. But you said yourself, those things didn't come to your mind as much when you're watching it. But for me, what did come to my mind, I don't think we've come onto it yet, but there are a lot of technical faults with this film, in my opinion. The number one being the pacing is all over the shop. It does seem like somebody edited this film and gone, oh, that bit has like three seconds of silence, just cut that out and move the dialogue forward, and that bit has got like 5-minute gap, let's just cut that out. There's no pacing. It's just get through the scenes, get through the dialogue, get to the next action scene, get to the end.
I think the most noticeable example of that is Liam Hemsworth's little pop from the moon to Earth. It was like popping round the corner to the shop. Just pop down to Earth, said, do you want to come to the moon? Jeff Goldblum, yeah, all right, let's go to the moon, pop back up again. Ridiculous.
But I mean, I suppose I'm looking for more emotional scenes and something that just they never even considered it. Look at the original film again. The Bill Pullman's character, Whitmore, and then you've got his wife, who was played by Mary McDonald, I think, in the original. Yeah, she played the First Lady, Marilyn.
Yeah.
Now, I bet it's something you've never thought about, but they only have one scene together in the first film. Every scene they have together, they're not in the same room. She's somewhere else, he's in the White House. And yet, all the way through, they're building this relationship, this couple that we've never met before. And you buy it. You buy every scene. And that scene where you see her in the hospital and she's dying, I'm telling you now that you can't tell me, oh yeah, it was hilarious when it was a corny death. You bought it. I really felt for them, Peter. I really felt like there was an emotional connection, and yet you look at all the scenes with Bill Pullman and his daughter, or Jeff Goldblum and his ex-girlfriend, or whatever she was. I haven't even started on her yet with a weird accent. There's just no emotional attachment to any of it. No one is emotionally invested in this film at all. I honestly spent 2/3 of this film thinking that character was supposed to be his ex-wife from the first film. Oh, was it Charlotte Gainsbourg? Is that? Yeah.
I just thought they'd recast her.
Did they even mention in the film what happened to his Connie from the first one?
No, I just thought they'd recast her. The character had such little resonance for me that when she was introduced, I just, for some reason, my headcanon went straight to, oh, that must be Connie, and that was that.
Because I can't remember where I found this out now, because I didn't hear it in the film, but someone told me the reason she's not in is because she had a car accident. Not the actress, the character.
What? And that's mentioned in Resurgence, is it?
Either that. There's the thing is, there's so much material that is available to bridge the two films. There's a comic book series. Right. There are 3 novels that are available now, and there is a novelization of this film. And I wonder whether it's mentioned in any of those things. But apparently, that's why she's not there. But I didn't get a moment where that was even mentioned. I just think there's lots of these things they just kind of go, it doesn't matter, they just get to the alien bit, get to the bit where things blow up. And I'm thinking, that's all very well and good, but I need to buy into this. I already don't buy into the world because it's too futuristic. I don't buy into the characters because they don't even believe in themselves anymore. There's no emotional investment, there's no structure to the story, and the pacing is all over the shop. I am not buying this film. I don't get it. I'm not in it. And I know that sounds silly, and I'm sure, like I said, people go in, it's just meant to be a bit of fun, relax. But I'm sorry, you can have a bit of fun. There are lots of really good, silly films that still have thought behind them. They've thought about these things, and they've thought about the scenes, and there's direction in the acting. There's nothing here. Nothing at all.
In terms of characters, I think what irritated me the most was not so much the treatment they got, but the missed opportunities. Like, Bill Pullman's character was clearly, mentally affected by his sort of mind meld, should we call it, in the first film. And you're just supposed to take that as given. Sort of, yeah, by the way, he's crazy now because of that in the first film. But I want to see a little more exploration of that.
Yep.
Is he trying to fight this off? Has he got this sort of alien consciousness now living within him that he's constantly battling with? But they just went, yeah, he's crazy now. He's crazy. That's fine. The hero, the resolute, standing strong hero of the first film. Yeah, he's crazy now because he got a bit of alien in him. And it's like, right, okay, but can we have a bit of explanation there?
Yeah. And I mean, there's already controversy about the casting of his daughter in this, in a very awkward way, because you've got Mika Monroe playing his daughter, who is a fabulous actress. She's really good. Really enjoy her in The Guest. I think she's wonderful. I really do. When I heard they cast her, I thought, great, really good. Some good acting chops in this. She does nothing at all, and she has no chemistry with anybody. I don't blame the actress, by the way. I blame the very poor direction and very poor writing. There could have been some wonderful scenes with her and her dad, and a totally wasted opportunity, ditched for the sake of doing a sort of nod recreation of the scene with Brent Spiner's character from the first one up against the window. And they do that with Bill Pullman without any impact of the original. It didn't have any. And there's a good example of the difference between pacing of the sequel and the original. You watch that original one, you really are like on tenterhooks. You're like, is something going on behind that window? And then boom. Whereas this was like, you know what's going to happen, and they made no effort to go, boom, there we go, a little scare, nothing. It was just like, yeah, just do it, get on with it. She had nothing to do, he had nothing to do, and you're right, they didn't explore those character traits and those things that really could have made a more interesting story. And I still don't quite understand this whole thing about Bill Pullman's character in this film. Was he insane? Because they played it like he's just a crazy man. When we know it was because of his...
In the first film, the aliens get inside his head, right?
Yeah.
And he collapses. And so my understanding was that had a more long-term effect on him, and he had this sort of
connection with them.
Psychic connection with them, that he was, that probably had been dormant for a fair while, but now they were returning, was growing and growing and growing, and it was sort of giving him nightmares and bothering him and stuff. But as I say, the character that we know from the first film would have been fighting that and saying, look, this is what's happening. They're coming back. This psychic link is getting worse. Here, let me help you. Do what you've got to do. Tie me to a bed and analyze my brain patterns. Do whatever you've got to do to let me help you. Whereas instead, he's just basically led in bed feeling sorry for himself. And it's like, oh, by the way, he's crazy now because he's got a beard, and now he's shaved it off. Look, he's a hero again.
Yeah,
it's just
daft.
It's just nuts.
It's just daft.
It's just nuts. But then this is the film where someone can be in a coma for 20 years and then just hop out of bed and go for a merry stroll.
Well, here's another thing we haven't even scraped yet. I mean, yeah, okay, Brent Spiner's character in the original, was very sort of OTT, but it was in a nice sporadical sense. It wasn't in your face all the way through, where it definitely was here.
I think I disagree with you here. I don't think he played it any differently, for me.
No, he didn't play it differently, but the script and the direction and the amount of scenes he had made it more irritating, because he was there doing what he does all the way through. Whereas in the original, it was, and we'll put a bit of him in here and a bit in there and a little bit there, and then you think he's dead, and that's fine. But he's in it so much. I'm like, I am bored of you being like this now. He's
got
irritating.
bills to pay nowadays. In '96, he was, one of the major stars of a major franchise. But he just did it for a bit of fun. But
I'm sorry, because he ends the film, and that ending is proper. it's straight to DVD nonsense, corny rubbish.
I like that last line. That sort of let's take the fight to that. It left me, when it cut to black, my first thought was, that would be awesome. I am looking forward to a film where they go and fight back. They go off into space and fight back. That was my initial feeling when that film cut to black.
It's fascinating that this is our first discussion, because I could not, on a grander scale, disagree with you more. That ending was like someone taking a piss on my face. It was just an insult. It was just so ridiculously corny. I just didn't want it to be that stupid. I really wanted it to be as sort of tongue-in-cheek and not like, look how spoofy this is. It might as well have been Spaceballs. It really might have done. It was just so angry with it. I really am. And let's touch on another subject which a lot of people have discussed about, is the Chinese element in this film, which is purely financial. They've slotted in a character again.
Well, two really, because you get Liam Hemsworth's sidekick. His sole purpose is to have a crush on the Chinese pilot.
Yes.
He literally serves no other purpose in the film.
Yeah. And he's pretty irritating too, to be fair.
Yeah. He,
This is Travis Trope, by the way. Travis Tope. Travis Tope.
I was going to say trope. He's a walking trope. Yeah. To me, that character just felt like Anton Yelchin was too expensive.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, we'll go there. But she really doesn't need to be there, does she? No. Although, I suppose we needed one major character in that group to solidify the... because for a film that bangs on about how the world's now unified, it's got a lot of characters all from the same country. No, I agree. But we know that the real reason that she is there is because Fox wanted to enter the biggest market and make money out of this film.
But the average moviegoer doesn't know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we're all starting to become a little bit more savvy than that. I mean, if they had... because the idea in this film is that there is a fleet of like super pilots that are like, almost celebrities, right? And by the way, that bit, corny as fuck, really pissed me off. Didn't like that
You think
either.
That's corny? Have you seen the Manchester United advert? So Fox have currently got a deal with Manchester United,
right? Okay,
whereby they do adverts for their blockbusters starring Manchester United. Okay, so they did one for X-Men, they did one for Deadpool, I want to say, and they've done one for Independence Day where that the Armageddon scene happens, and rather than it being those characters, it's the sort of 8 or 9 Manchester United players, and then they go up in the sky and they have a space battle. But here's the hilarious thing, they're using football lingo.
That size says it all for me. And then you're going to enter into... Well, me and Fox, we just don't get on these days, frankly. We just don't get on. Yeah. This whole thing is motivated by money. I know everyone's going to say, well, isn't every film? But, there is no reason for this other than Fox don't have Star Wars and we need a new Star Wars, and we're still waiting for James Cameron to pull out 20 avatars. So,
do you know what worries me? If Fox with Deadpool 2 properly establish how he breaks the fourth wall and it makes another shit ton of money, is they'll just chuck him in everything. Because he breaks the fourth wall, they'll just have Deadpool pop up. It'll be like Where's Wally? Every film. Be like the Stan Lee cameo in Marvel films. Yeah. You just have Deadpool just pop up in every franchise film. So in Independence Day, there'd be a quick cut to a jet and Deadpool would be in the cockpit. He'd just quip to the camera and then cut away again.
What else do I want to moan about this film?
What about the Alien Queen?
Okay, so straight from the story of James Cameron, of course. I mean, the Alien Queen idea again was just kind of stupid. I didn't like that either. I didn't think it made any sense. And the thing I was really disappointed with about the aliens is that in the first one, that I do find them quite scary, even though the physical design is not as intimidating as Geek as Alien. But they seem to manage to pull off something quite creepy. Whereas this... again, I blame the CG, excesses of CG. I just don't buy.
I found the the aliens sort of in capture and then them escaping, quite scary. Although I thought it was a bit of a missed trick. They could have had, the outside battle juxtaposed with a handful of aliens escaping within the base.
Yes. Yeah.
Running loose around the base, and them sort of being torn. Well, we've got all our forces deployed out here, but we've also got aliens running loose in the base. But that instead, we just saw one alien escape. Weren't really told what happened to the rest, and the accountant, was he an accountant?
There's another hideously irritating character in this film. Whoever he was just bloody awful.
To be fair, my lack of remembering characters I don't think is necessarily this film. Without a couple of rewatches and a bit of an IMDb session, I normally can't remember most characters' names and specific jobs and roles.
Okay, well, I can, and I still can't remember anybody in this film. He was an accountant, and he was very irritating, and I didn't like that idea of just, him, like, again, it was another one of those, well, he's there, give him something to do. And you're absolutely right, though. In a film that seems to be, in many ways, is paying homages to other sci-fi franchises, and very obviously aliens with the Queen, you're right, there should have been. I mean, in fact, when the aliens were in enclosures in that whatever site it was, it did remind me of Alien Resurrection, where you've got all of them in little pods. And I thought, you're right, you could have had a bloody good colonial marine style alien battle in you if you had some good characters to follow. Because you had like an accountant.
You could have justified that, well, we can't take many men off the front line, so a handful of you come with me, we need to go into this base and fight off these few little aliens. But no,
that was a wasted opportunity. Roland Emmerich went for the he doesn't think of the claustrophobia and that kind of thing. He thought, well, let's go outside and see this giant Cloverfield style ant running around.
To be fair, I didn't hate that. I didn't hate the giant alien queen outside.
It didn't look good, though. You can't tell me it looked good.
Well, aside from the Alien franchise, I'm not entirely convinced any aliens look good. They all look a bit weird, and they all just look a bit dumb.
And in fact, we haven't again. I know you mentioned Julius Levison earlier, Judd Hirsch's character. He's another one that's in the film with nothing to do. He's on a bus with some random kids for the whole thing.
I actually really enjoyed his story as a little diversion. I think mainly because I love the character. I think he's a great character. Also immortal, it would seem, because he doesn't seem to have aged a day in 20 years.
He doesn't look any older than he did in the first, for sure. Yeah. But he doesn't have a purpose. He doesn't need to be there, and that's the problem. He just doesn't need to be there. He's there for that reunion party you mentioned earlier. That's all there is. Then he teams up with Jeff Goldblum at the end and says, "Oh, hello. We're in the middle of the, what is it? The White Desert. Isn't that funny? Here we are. Oh, like it's a queen over there. Let's crack on with that."
He is deliberately heading to that place.
Yeah, but with a bus of random kids. Who cares about a bus of... No one cares. We don't know who they are. If you don't care, if you don't buy into these people, you don't care whether they live or die. That's the truth. If you don't care about them, you don't care. You're not invested in whether they survive. And that's the difference between a good horror film and a bad horror film. The good horror films, like Alien, are the ones where the people you really care about die. Those are the ones you care about. If you don't care about these people because you don't know who they are or why they're there, what's the point?
I think the real tragic example of that in this film, though, is I could not have cared less when President Whitmore when President Whitmore died. I literally couldn't have given less of a shit. And he's literally the main character in the first film. I know it's an ensemble film, but I definitely think he's the core that it all rotates around, that first film. And I just didn't care. And then it being a sort of not a pointless sacrifice, because it did destroy the Queen's ship and armour and whatnot, but I just didn't care.
No, nor did I. I'll be frank, I didn't care about any of it. I really didn't. I like I said, I've never been more disappointed with a sequel ever. Just the worst. Anything else I'd like to mention? you of course know how I feel about music in films. I'm a really big fan of film scores. I really do enjoy them very much, and I look into them a lot. I'm a massive fan of David Arnold's work. Many people know him for the Bond films. He did pretty much all of Pierce Brosnan's and a couple of Daniel Craig's. He did the score for Independence Day, for Stargate, for Godzilla. People do remember the Stargate theme, even from the TV show. It was his theme.
Yeah, I mean, it was the theme tune to the TV show,
but it was still his theme that he wrote. And Independence Day, the score, it was one of the first scores I really discovered as a kid. I loved it. And again, I thought it was very scary. David Arnold, very good at doing the big brassy sort of intense score. This film has Harold Closer doing the score, who did Day After Tomorrow, which was probably his only half decent score, which he scored that the same time he did Alien vs Predator, which nobody remembers because it was rubbish. And another composer who was called Thomas Wanker, and for some reason changed his name to Thomas Wander. Don't know why. And they co-composed this. Now, I won't go into this too much because I don't think many people are going to care that much, but the music was terrible in that it didn't fit any of the scenes. It was like they must have composed it in a room and said, there's 10 tracks that we've just done, just put them in the film. Oh, and also we forgot to do the theme tune. Damn. Oh, okay, well, we'll just cover it and you can slot that in. And we'll take the track from the bit where the president does a speech in his first one, we'll stick that in somewhere, and that'll do. None of it joined up. None of it matched any of the scenes that were in the background. It was truly awful. And I hope I never hear any music coming from them ever again. It was awful.
Agree. I thought the score was just an abomination, and it didn't fit with the sort of Independence Day theme. So the classic theme, didn't fit with this new score at all.
No.
So you'd have this sort of quite dull, just sort of plodding score, and then all of a sudden the theme happened, and then it just stopped.
Disappeared again. Terrible. Just terrible. There's probably one moment where my ears picked up and went, whoa, okay. And there was a bit where the alien ship is approaching the moon before it destroys the moon base, and there was some really high violins going on. It was like, ooh, like a horror film. And I literally just go, oh.
But again, it was just generic.
Yeah, it totally was.
Horror score.
It was like trickery in my mind, just because they used that sort of those notes that sort of go, whoa, something's about to happen, and it did make me wake up, and then it just disappeared into nothing. So I'm not going to spend loads of time on that. It was just shit from beginning to end. The score was terrible, fucking terrible. Really, really upset me.
Talking of the moon base, if the alien ship had its own gravity, that lifted literally the Earth off of the Earth's surface, shouldn't it have lifted the moon away from the Earth? Or at least lifted the moon base off of the moon?
They didn't have it turned on at that point.
Oh, okay.
The off switch was on.
But it wasn't a weapon, was it? They were literally saying it was so big it had its own
yeah, but it's alien technology.
Field.
That's what it is. Okay. It's because it's alien technology.
Wizard did it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about that, Tom. Nobody cares about that. All they want to see is Big Ben being blown up again.
I like the fact they skimmed the top off the moon as well. When they went over the top, which is gonna affect the tides and just cause a nightmare. No, the fact that the moon is now not a circle.
No, it's fine.
And they've chopped the top half of the moon off.
I promise you, in the sequel, the moon will be back, and so will the wheel and Big Ben. They'll be back. They fixed it before they even left. It's sorted now. Don't worry about it.
Well, I hope so. I've just got visions of the wheel not being destroyed, but just rolling through London,
down
just rolling off.
Yeah. I think logic goes out the window, doesn't it? But then again, people are going to say, well, this is the franchise that saved the Earth by plugging a Mac into the mothership, which to me didn't seem that ridiculous at the time, because I just thought, well, people always go, how can you destroy an alien ship with a Mac? Well, no, not really, because they were using the signals in our satellite to contact all the alien ships, so they were using our technology, so we were putting a virus, sending a virus back. Yeah. That isn't as ridiculous to me.
It's one of those surface level complaints that actually, when explained, makes perfect sense, but people like to use it as a complaint so much.
Yeah.
They're not willing to. As soon as you start explaining it, they go, no, it's stupid. Whereas actually it makes perfect sense.
I think it makes perfect sense.
Whereas in this, sort of, now we've got to that point, what I was saying earlier with regards to them just flying off is Yeah, it's a trope, but it's a well-established sci-fi trope that you kill the head of any sort of invading force. So, be it the droids in Star Wars or the Queen in Aliens or whatever, and the rest will just surrender or disappear. But to be fair, they don't like all because they establish that they're all psychically plugged into the Queen, and that is how I would have liked to have seen Whitmore die.
Or fighting the Queen?
No,
in a power loader.
The fact that he was also psychically plugged into the aliens. To me, I'd have liked the Queen to have that effect on him as well as she did on all the sort of worker aliens, should we say, so that when she died and they all died, he also died.
That would make more sense.
So they were victorious and he won, but they knew beforehand when the Queen died, he was going to die. And he fought alongside him, and they knew ultimately they either lost this battle or he died.
The problem is with that logic is that Brett Spiner's character would have died too, which meant that he wouldn't be able to deliver that amazing final line.
But Brett Spiner's character, who had no psychic connection whatsoever.
He did, though.
Did he?
Yeah.
In Resurgence?
Yeah, he did. Him, the Tribe guy, and Bill Pullman all had the psychic link.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have been in the end. And he couldn't have said that wonderful line that everybody is going to remember forever. Not. No one's going to remember it. And another point about the end of the first one is going back to my thing of spending the time investing into the film. The end point of the Mac bringing down the mothership didn't matter as much either, because you bought into everything else that went on up to that point, and this you don't buy into any of it, which is why none of it is acceptable. If they'd spent more time with character development, pacing and everything else running up to the end, I would not have disliked any of the end stuff as much as I did. None of it. I would have bought the Queen a bit more, even some of the corny dialogue at the end a bit more, but there was no respect to the audience throughout any of the film, whereas I think the first one has a lot of respect to the audience to a point, and then it goes, right, we're gonna have a bit more fun now. And that's fine. But in terms of where it goes now, all I can say is I really hope it doesn't go anywhere. I hope this is it. I hope they never touch it again. I hope they realize that this is just a disaster, an absolute disaster. If this goes anywhere, Saturday morning cartoon with them and their little alien guns off in space. Do that and leave me alone, but do not give me another film like that. I will not be happy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd happily see another one.
I think you're mad. Of all the films I thought you would hate, I thought this would be the one. I'm flabbergasted that you like it more than I do.
Do you know what? I'm amazed at myself with blockbuster cinema specifically this year, because everything I went into expecting to love, I didn't really care for. Everything I went into expecting to hate, I really enjoyed. And I really don't understand it. I want fussed on Deadpool. I loved Batman vs Superman. Quite enjoyed X-Men Apocalypse. Quite enjoyed Independence Day Resurgence. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't
know what's wrong with you either. There is something wrong with you.
Someone's bumped me on the head and my sort of taste barometer has gone a bit wonky. It doesn't make sense.
One other thing I really wanted to mention about Independence Day Resurgence was in the original you had Robert Loggia playing like the military general alongside Bill Pullman, and I knew going in, I thought, that actor died quite a while ago. And then there's a scene where the president in Independence Day Resurgence is there, and he's in the background sat in a wheelchair, and I was like, weird, they must have done prosthetics on somebody to make him look like that actor. I thought, why go to all that effort? And then I found out that it really is him, and he did it before he died.
Well, it's just for me that just seemed like a neat little cameo. You know, he was already gravely ill at that point, and he just spent a day on set as a little cameo, as a little show of respect.
But you could have spent that coin a lot better, couldn't you? I just thought that was a wasted opportunity. I don't know. I'm finding it difficult to say anything positive about this.
From a character point of view, although we don't really see much of his character, it does tell us that, despite everything his character has been through in the intervening years, which is clearly quite a lot if we assume from his physical state, he's still part of the military and still fighting this fight.
Yeah, I just was like, wow, that was weird. Really, I can hand on heart, I knew within the first 20 seconds of the film starting that I wasn't going to like it. From the opening title sequence, I was like, oh no,
the opening titles reminded me of Superman the movie.
It reminded me of the end of Men in Black in reverse.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's what it felt like. But literally the second it started, because imagine someone said to you, I know people don't respect Independence Day like Star Wars like I do, but if someone said to you, Star Wars, the first one, they did the da-da-da-da with the music and the crawl, and then the second one they did something different, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Really? You ditched the crawl? To me, I felt like that straight away. I thought, oh my god, they've done something entirely different. Okay, it didn't have an iconic opening in the original to most. To me, though, it kind of did. I really loved the way the title sequence worked in the original. That sort of the letters going and then blowing in as if the ship landing and boom, destruction. I just wanted it to open the same.
That is an awful lot like Die Hard, though.
In what way?
The first Die Hard film, the titles come in like that, don't they?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's sort of, yeah.
Hit together and then...
I like the continuity in the visual style.
Yeah,
but there was none of that. And also, like, the music in the original title sequence is sort of... In fact, that's a point about the whole opening of the first film. Musically and the pacing, right from the get-go, you feel like something's going to happen, and it is like an escalation all the way to the point of the destruction, whereas this film starts with about half an hour of nothing, half an hour of very poor explanation and nothing happens. It's very dull. Whereas the first film is like glimpse of the aliens arriving, what's going on Earth, something's going on up in space, back to the aliens, all the ships are coming out, let's meet this character, let's meet that character, and everything's getting quite tense, back to the aliens are coming down to Earth, something else is going on, boom. It just felt like it was building up, and then explosion. Whereas this was like just dull. Nothing happened. And it didn't introduce any characters properly, it didn't explain who they were, it didn't give you a backstory. They wanted you to buy all the comics and the books that they released to sort of fill in the gap of 20 years. Dull.
I have to say, I wasn't bored at any point during this film. Not once.
How did you watch this film?
Honestly,
How did you watch it?
How did I watch it?
Was it
at the cinema?
Yeah, it's a good place to watch a film. Did you watch it in 3D or 2D?
2D.
Right, and did you watch it in a standard production or was it IMAX?
No, it's standard. Just Sunday afternoon.
Right, I watched this film at Odeon IMAX in 3D and I was bored to tears. Now that says a lot about the whole film. To be honest, when it was mildly interesting, it was because the 3D was alright.
But do you not think maybe if you just watch a film in standard 2D presentation, you can just sort of sit back and almost let it wash over you and just let it unfold? Whereas I find with 3D and IMAX, I'm very much sort of on edge, like, right, when's the 3D IMAX stuff happening? What's going on? This is great, isn't it? Oh, look at this is brilliant. And the whole time and if it turned out to be a film that wasn't quite as big and action packed and didn't have sort of the scope of cinematography that IMAX dictates, I might be a little disappointed.
I didn't find it a distraction. Frankly, I found it to be the opposite. I thought I was waiting for the 3D just to give me something to do, because I just felt the rest was just nothing was happening.
How was the 3D?
It was quite good.
Yeah.
It wasn't amazing. I've seen better IMAX films.
Because I imagine the shot of the mothership approaching the moon and stuff on IMAX 3D was probably
you know what?
Quite cool.
Those bits weren't as impressive. And I was thinking again, if I was watching the original now, because they got some great shots. Like, again, when you think back to like Star Wars.
It's had a 3D.
No, it didn't.
The original?
No, it didn't.
It didn't.
So it's now had a 4K upgrade.
Oh, right.
So you can get it in 4K. Only in every territory but the UK, though. They've ditched the 4K release here. Don't know why.
Oh, marvellous.
But, like in Star Wars, when you have that opening shot of the little ship going away, and then like the ship that crawls over the top of the screen. Now, Independence Day 1 is filled with all that. And in 3D, I can imagine a lot of that to be great, because they use actual models. Whereas in this one, it was also this, look, there's a nice CG picture rolling over my head. It didn't have any weight in the visual. So it wasn't that great.
There was maybe, I noticed, maybe 2 or 3 practical effects shots in the whole film.
I couldn't even tell you one of them.
And I think they were just sort of alien tentacle. Well, the alien tentacle around.
Oh, his neck.
Whitmore's neck.
Yeah.
That's probably about it.
Some of the fighting scenes were good with the ships. No, not even on a par with the original, by the way. Which the dogfight scenes, a lot of people seem to remember more than I do. I don't remember that being my favourite bit of the first film, but they are quite good. But they're certainly better than the ones in this film.
Well, I think the first film brought dogfighting to a whole new generation. World War II films were done, sort of aerial World War II films. Star Wars knockoffs were done. And there wasn't a huge... Top Gun, but even that was mid-80s. So the dogfighting in Independence Day was really the first time that our generation had seen anything like that up on the big screen in a big blockbuster. Whereas now it's done to death. Every sci-fi film that can fit it in, every sci-fi show that can fit it in has dogfighting in it.
Alright, and so final word on Independence Day Resurgence. You seem to have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You reluctantly. Well, I did, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll roll my chair a little further away from you and say, yeah. Do you know what? To me, it felt like The Lost World compared to Jurassic Park.
Well, that's very generous of you. I can tell you that.
That's what it felt like to me. And I don't want to review a film by comparing it to another film, but it's that quite significant decline, and yet fun enough in its own right.
Well, you know how people like Alien and then they think Alien 4 is terrible? Generally. I wouldn't even give it...
Go Alien versus Predator.
Oh, yeah.
If you really want that franchise just falling off a cliff.
Yeah. Well, I would say Independence Day Resurgence is worse than that in its comparison.
Fair.
I'd say it's much worse.
Is it Attack of the Clones to Empire Strikes Back?
Worse.
Whoa.
And you know how I feel about Attack of the Clones.
Whoa.
I would say it is worse. They had all the ingredients.
So you're saying the characters in this are worse than the characters in Attack of the Clones?
Yes.
The dialogue in this is worse than dialogue in Attack of the Clones?
I'd even say visually Attack of the Clones is probably more satisfying than this.
Whoa.
That's genuinely how really bad I feel about it. I really do. It is nothing but an embarrassment for me. 20 years waiting for that.
I think the wait, criticising how long you've had to wait is unfair, because I even think this is maybe a little bit too soon for the world they've tried to set it in. I think any sooner you'd have just been watching people clearing up rubble.
What an impression.
Just Jeff Goldblum with a broom.
I heartily suggest to anybody that is on the fence about watching Independence Day Resurgence to seek out the original, which has been re-released on Blu-ray with a brand new transfer made from a 4K master. It does look superb. The original Blu-ray is a bit iffy. This is miles above the original.
Yeah,
it's really good.
I've got the original and it's okay.
It's fine. It's not
bad. Considering it was one of the first catalogue films to be put onto Blu-ray as well, especially from the 90s, which is a tricky era because stuff wasn't, a lot of it was shot on videotape, and the effect shots were shot in different quality to the live action stuff, and where there is CGI it all needed to be redone and things like that. So 90s stuff is tricky. With that in mind, the original Blu-ray is good, but I'm intrigued to see this this new pressing. While we're on the Independence Day subject on the whole, then, how is the extended cut of the original film?
Well, I've seen the extended cut was available previously on DVD.
Okay.
So I know the extended cut very well, and in fact, I did opt to watch the extended cut rather than the theatrical version before I watched Resurgence. And it's interesting because there are some scenes that are put back in that are unnecessary. They've just put them in because they had them.
Yeah.
Some of the editing is a bit dodgy. Like there'll be a scene where the music was very specifically scored to the structure of the original sequence, and there's a scene in the middle of it, and they literally just drop the music, go to the scene, and then go back, and the music comes back on. But in some way it sort of works because the scene is slightly comical, so it almost works,
right?
But on a different level. The most interesting thing about the director's cut of the original Independence Day is the family of hello boys, I'm back. His family, okay. In the original film, he's got 2 sons and a daughter.
Yeah.
And the youngest son appears to be travel sick all the way through the film. Because there's a bit where he runs out, he's led down in the sofa at the back, and he's got like a flannel on his head, and there's a bit where they're driving and he runs out and throws up. Nothing more is made of that. Nothing. The only thing that happens with that family is the slightly edgy relationship the kids have with the dad, because the dad's embarrassing and he saves the world at the end. Great, happy days. But in the director's cut, the actual story is the youngest kid is ill and needs medication all the way through the film, and his mother died of whatever illness he has. And whenever he's been sick because he doesn't have any medication. There's a big altercation with the elder son and the dad saying, we're not coming with you, we're moving on because you're embarrassing, and we've got to look after the youngest one, and he gets upset and blah 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 blah. And at the bit where Will Smith ends up in Area 51 with the alien that's still alive, and they're rushing the alien down, and Brent Spiner's character is like, let's get into the container room stat. In the director's cut, at the same time, is it Randy Quaid? Is that the actor, Randy? Well, yeah. He's running in with the boy going, you've got to help my son, he's dying, I need your help. And that's running in tandem with that.
Oh, okay.
So nothing really more happens with that bit. That's kind of it. At the same time, the daughter, who barely has anything in it, do you remember that she has a scene right at the beginning where she's with a boy in a car, and he's like, this could be our last night on Earth, you don't want to die a virgin, do you?
Yeah.
And then she gets dragged away. Well, the next time they go to another camp, she meets another guy with curly hair who she sort of falls for again. And you sort of see there's a brief moment with them. And then later on, they're all together in Area 51. And she says to him, during the big battle at the end, where everyone's like cowering down, she says the line to him and says, this could be our last night on Earth. You don't want to die a virgin, do you? And he turns and says, well, if we do die, we'll both be virgins. And that's that. And it's like, she's got a little story there as well, that sort of thing. Yeah. All that cut from the theatrical cut. So that family has nothing else to do except the father-family issue. So there's all that in it to start with.
I was surprised not to see that family touched on in this film. Not because they particularly needed to be in there. They had no plot reason. They really were only in the first film by sheer chance. But just in terms of bringing everyone back, I was surprised. I'm not saying I wanted them, because I think they'd have just felt like an unnecessary addition, but considering their father sacrificed his life to blow up the mothership, well, not the mothership, but the sub-mothership, I guess, the one that was holding America to ransom, when they're having the Independence Day celebration, the War of 96 celebration, you'd think his children might be, VIPs or something.
He's the guy who saved them all.
Yeah, just a cameo of his kids, because there's not even any real resolution to it. His son is stood there crying, and he just gets tapped on the shoulder and goes, "Your dad was a hero, kid," and that's it. So just bringing them back as like VIPs at the celebration or something. And
yet they felt the need to bring back Brent Spiner's other scientist friend. Don't know if you noticed this.
Who's now his boyfriend.
Was it his boyfriend in this? Is that what it was?
That was my assumption, yeah.
It did seem slightly romantic, but I just kind of thought I overread it.
That it was his boyfriend. but I don't remember that being at all even touched on.
Not at all.
But the fact that he was by his bedside day in, day out, and then, you know, how they parted ways at the end, it definitely...
Oh, okay.
I definitely assumed that it was supposed to be his boyfriend.
I didn't really. I kind of took it as they were just kind of soft, you know, and then nothing more. But I mean, he was in the first film and he has like 2 lines. He's virtually an extra, and yet he's like a main side character in this film. I thought, of all the ones that did survive in the original that you opted to not bring back, you know, that was quite surprising to me. I just thought that was strange.
What else? Will Smith picture on the wall, awful.
Oh God, yeah.
It looked like they put a frame with a green screen
and did
on
put it in
set
after,
and then put Will Smith on there after.
It's probably because maybe they started filming thinking, oh well, he might actually still be in it. So
well, it was just like a post, like an American flag or something on the wall,
probably.
And they thought, oh, we better CGI Will Smith into that.
Probably. Do you have any issue with the fact that they've recast Jeff Goldblum's daughter, who was
Jeff Goldblum's daughter?
No, sorry, Bill Pullman's daughter. Because
I think I definitely think you can look at this cynically and say that what's her name? Mae Whitman, is it?
Yeah, Whitmore.
Whitmore.
And she,
no, the character's Whitmore.
Sorry.
Mae Whitman, is it?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry, I got confused. The actress's name is Mae Whitman, and the character's name is Patricia Whitmore. Yeah, and because she's a very successful actress now.
I think she is very funny, very good actress. I specifically remember her from Scott Pilgrim. But I think there's a cynical way of looking at it and saying, well, she's not classically Hollywood beautiful and therefore she doesn't fit and all this. But ultimately, I'm not sure how the role was written. She'd have necessarily been the right choice for the role. But then having said that, with all the other actors, they clearly wrote the role for the actor.
True.
Whereas with her, they've written the character and then worried about the actor later on. But nobody seems to be making much of a fuss at the actor that played Will Smith's... I keep saying son, but it's not his son, is it? It's his stepson.
Stepson. And in real life, I think he's his nephew or something? Or
the original actor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ross Bagley is the original actor.
No one seems to be making any sort of fuss that they haven't brought him back.
No, weirdly. He's sort of still acting. There's a little bit now and again.
But, you know, there's precedent left, right and centre for child stars being recast.
I tell you what I would like to have seen in it more than anything, actually, because ever since he seems to have done... Well, he's quite iconic in sci-fi now. Is
the dog?
Where was the dog? No. Yeah. Adam Baldwin, who played one of the Area 51...
Jane from Firefly.
Exactly. Now, what a feat and a coup that would have been to have him in it, who's now acquired so much
he's a cult hero, essentially.
So why wasn't he in it?
Yeah, that seems like a no-brainer. Even if it's just a cameo with, you know, just in a room full of military characters. Does he survive the first one?
Yeah,
he does.
His last line is to the boy of the dad who saved them all. He says, "What your father did was really brave."
Yeah,
you know. Yeah. And he's there. That's it. They all survived. Everybody was in Area 51 at the end survived. Everybody did.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Apart from Brent Spiner, who actually did.
Yeah, we rewatched that because Sarah.
I don't think there's any argument that he could still be alive.
I rewatched it the other day and I asked the person watching it with me, do you think this person is dead? And they said no. And I thought, well, it's very obvious that he is, because his eyes are wide open and they've checked his pulse and they're not doing anything. I know you can let that go and sort of go, you know, in his head he's thinking, oh, he's got a pulse, but I'm just not going to say it out loud. Okay, but
aliens did it.
It's alien technology.
No, but you could argue that because he's had that psychic link, he's sort of like shell-shocked and frozen and just static. But what they should have done in this film to establish that is had Whitmore, after he's been used as the alien's vessel of communication, to be led on the floor, motionless, eyes open, and then revived. And that would have established that is, somebody goes into that sort of catatonic state post contact and then comes out of it, and the reason Brent Spiner went into a coma is because so much else was going on. Although they just thought he was dead, whereas this time, because of that, they know Whitmore is not dead, and so they revive him. But they missed an opportunity in this film to establish what, ever since we saw Brent Spiner in the trailer, has been a criticism from fans of the first film. And they could have quite easily established why it's not a criticism, and chose not to. Lazy.
Well, the whole thing is lazy. It's all very lazy. It's very lazy. The other bit I wanted to mention was the speech. And they tried to do a bit where Bill Pullman gave another speech when he was in the aircraft hangar, I think, with Jeff Goldblum. And it was so sort of, don't bother. Don't even bother. It's just so...
Thing is, there's a lot of tropes that I think the original Independence Day didn't necessarily start, but re-engaged popular culture with.
Yeah. And
now, 20 years later, we're at a point where these tropes are very tropey, essentially.
They're a bit tropey.
It's what I sort of call Pulp Fiction syndrome, which is you end up inspiring so many things that you yourself then feel tropey. So when I now go back and watch Pulp Fiction, it just feels like a generic tropey crime film to me, because so many films have ripped it off now that I can't enjoy the original, because I'm just bored of those sorts of films. And that's kind of also the case with the original Independence Day. What's ironic in this one is that it's Roland Emmerich himself that's responsible for all the films that have imitated it. And
so he's out-troped himself, basically.
Yeah, well, he just keeps out-troping himself. It was aliens. No, aliens aren't good enough. Let's have a big monster. Oh, monsters aren't good enough. Let's have cold weather. Oh, cold weather's not good enough. Let's have a Mayan prophecy that destroys everything. He got to the point where he couldn't even be bothered to think up a proper reason for the Earth being destroyed. He just went, magic.
Do you know, bit of trivia for you, but they were already sort of in pre-production on Godzilla doing Independence Day, and Dylan in the first film, Will Smith's son in it, stepson, he has a toy with him all the way through, and it's a Godzilla toy.
Is it really?
It's one with 3 heads. It's not like the main Godzilla, but it's one of the characters from the Godzilla films. So now Roland Emmerich is, of course, talking about another one, which he can just forget about it, because this film has massively underperformed. We're a week after release, and it has underperformed massively. No doubt it'll do very well in China, just like Terminator Genesis did, and that's pretty much the equivalent of this film, having the original star in it, and meaning to be some kind of really clever continuation of it, and being a complete disappointment to everybody who really invested in it. To you even more than me, because I found it tolerable, whereas you...
Genesis. Yeah. I think we're kind of opposite opinions too.
Definitely.
So how we are with this. I think the thing that I am most worried about now is the new Stargate film.
Yeah, which is the other project that he's talking about.
Because the only difference is that he's talking about the new Stargate being a reboot, because the TV series took the mythology so deep that there's just no untangling that. But he could try and get Kurt Russell back and go down the route of a sequel that ignores the TV series, but I think he's talking reboot,
definitely,
which is fine. But I do wonder now what we're going to get. He very much seems like a director who used to be very character focused because he had to be.
Yeah.
Because he needed to keep the audience engaged. And once he discovered CGI and spectacle, he just stopped caring about characters.
And that is the total downfall.
Personally, I would say this is the best film for me. This is the best film Roland Emmerich has made, blockbuster wise anyway,
since
Independence Day.
So I would argue that Godzilla and Day After Tomorrow have some merit, only because Godzilla has, funny enough, a lot of this goofy crap, which I'm not very fond of. At the time, I didn't get into Godzilla, but over the years, I've gone back and revisited it, sort of, and it is very intentionally goofy, but even still not to the degree that this is. And Day After Tomorrow, I actually thought was okay, because it's
played very straight Day After Tomorrow.
And again, that's why I think I like it. It's much more straight. Like it has the sort of the straightness that Independence Day did have. So I like that. To a degree, I could even watch 2012, but I would totally agree with your analysis that it's completely focused on spectacle and nothing to do with any of the characters. They're completely superfluous to what is going on.
It recycles plots from Day After Tomorrow, which is character needs to get from here to here to meet somebody. It's just dumb and dull, and it does that sort of annoying thing that disaster movies do, where the character you're following happens to be passing through the carnage and get away completely unscathed. There's none of that in Independence Day. There's none of that in this, to be fair. And that sort of thing just seems a bit dumb to me. But I think, in a world where San Andreas exists, I think disaster movies need to up their game.
San Andreas was good.
San Andreas, I think, really brought back that sort of... It had all the tropes of disaster movies, but it had likeable characters, and you cared about them reaching their goal.
Yeah.
How are they going to do a sequel to that? I'm not really sure.
I don't know.
Unless it's going to be in a different natural disaster, but just another earthquake is like, why do you still live there?
Just move
away.
I'd agree. You're right, though, and in fact, that's a great example of how we've not moved past the point where these films aren't capable of being good anymore. We haven't. San Andreas is the perfect example. Like I said, you do actually buy into what's going on. You buy into the characters. You actually care whether they survive.
Yeah.
And if you don't care, none of it is. All the spectacle, you can do whatever you like. None of it matters if you don't care. And Independence Day Resurgence, I did not care. And this from a person that wanted to care more than probably anybody else. I valued it much higher than.
And you can't make the argument that, San Andreas has got The Rock, who is charisma personified, because Independence Day has got Jeff Goldblum, who's an incredibly charismatic actor.
Absolutely.
You've got Judd Hirsch, who again is, he's great. You've got Bill Pullman. He's not The Rock's sort of level of screen presence, but he's a damn fine actor. And sort of Roland Emmerich seems to have a similar talent to George Lucas, which is get the worst possible performance from a great actor. Jeff Goldblum in this really, I draw parallels with Ewan McGregor in the Star Wars prequels, where you've got somebody is a great actor, but it's just not there. There's just no lights are on, but no one's home.
I think I'd say that for a lot of the cast. I do feel like a tad bad for all the new cast members too. I'm not saying that they are really good actors, but I'm sure they're a lot better than what they actually came out with there. Mika Monroe, we know, is genuinely good.
Mika Monroe is great, but is she great in a blockbuster? We've seen her in It Follows and The Guest, these small indie films, and she's really good in them.
Yeah, but the only difference there is that there's a concentration on direction and character. And there's no reason why you can't have that in a big blockbuster. There's no reason. It's been done before. There's no reason why it can't happen now. There's enough people at computers painting lovely CG ships. You don't need to supervise them. You, as a director, Roland, need to focus on these guys who are sat in front of a blue screen trying to imagine what you've already got in your head. Help them out, for Christ's sake. They need your help. They need the direction from you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there.
I mean, it's more important than ever to have a solid actors director in these blockbusters, because we're getting closer and closer. I know there's been a little bit of a craze of moving away from that and back to practical at the moment, but that's only a nostalgia bit, and that's going to disappear again soon. And it's getting more and more important to get these performances out of these actors, because they're good actors, but you know, they're acting against nothing. They're being told, oh, there's a big alien over there, run away from it. And I think it's telling that arguably the blockbuster with the best characters and the best performances for years, decades even maybe, is The Force Awakens, that had real props, real ships, real practical effects, and a character director. You know, a director that's cut his teeth doing character stuff and then gradually entered the world of bigger and bigger spectacle blockbuster ways.
And the next one down from that, frankly, for me, is Star Trek, and that's the same bloody director.
Yeah, again, most of the scenes in Star Trek that involve people have practical effects. You know, the space stuff is big CGI spectacle, but all the stuff that's at a character level is all practical. It's you know, they haven't, despite the fact that Star Trek often gets criticised for being people in makeup, they didn't take the opportunity that they had to make real alien looking aliens. They carried on with the practical effects and got these performances out of people.
I just want to reiterate again, in case I didn't really make it clear earlier, Charlotte Gainsborough, where was she from in this film? Because I can tell if she was French or English or
I
thought
she was English, and then within the last sort of 5-10 minutes of this film, they mentioned that she's French.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But once I knew she was French, I was like, okay, I can see that she was French now. But I thought she was English.
Her dialogue stood out to me over everybody else's, because I don't know if you noticed, but nearly every line she did was ADR. Nearly every line was ADR. You could tell she'd gone back in and done it all again. It just stood out.
Bear in mind, I'm not an American audience or a Chinese audience or even a Welsh audience trying to place an accent. I'm English, and I thought her accent was English,
and it wasn't
until somebody told me it was French.
It was bizarre. I thought it was bizarre.
Maybe she played it with a much stronger French accent, and then they ADR'd everything.
I really think that is the case. I think that they ADR'd it to change the accent, because for me, whenever she was talking to Jeff Goldblum, she wasn't in the same room as him. You know, visually she was. Sound-wise, she was not. You could tell. It's very clear. The audio quality is entirely different.
It is.
From her dialogue to his, and everybody else is in the room. It's plainly obvious. But it doesn't matter, we're not paying attention to that because we're looking at all the big ships blowing up.
Definitely.
So, I've never been more disappointed in my life. Rubbish.
Okay.
That's how I feel.
I would say, if you are a big fan of the original, like a big fan, it's one of your faves, give this a miss. Or don't give it a miss, but go in with a lot of caution. You know, you're a big fan, so go see it, but you probably won't enjoy it. But if you like the original as Sunday afternoon easygoing entertainment, give this a go. You might enjoy it.
No, you won't. It's just shit. Hated it. Okay. Thanks for listening to our pilot podcast. You can find Geeks Talk Movies on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and iTunes.
Comment on our discussion using the hashtag geekstalkmovies.